Real-time crime centers have become a cornerstone of modern policing, helping agencies connect information faster, improve coordination, and make smarter decisions when seconds matter most. But building or refreshing a center can be complex. Constant Technologies helps simplify the process. Constant has partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country to plan, design, and build real-time crime centers, communication centers, drone operation rooms, and emergency operations centers, spaces that are purpose-built to support today's public safety missions. From American-built operator consoles to advanced video wall systems, we focus on the physical environment and technology infrastructure that brings your data and teams together. Our experienced design team works closely with your agency to create layouts and plans that support current operations and future growth. The result is a command environment where video communications and collaboration come together, helping your team move from reactive to proactive policing. Learn more at constanttech.com and schedule a complimentary design consultation. To get started, contact my friend, Lieutenant Sean Arthur, retired from the Collier County Sheriff's Office, at 239-469-4901. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey, welcome to A Tactical Pause. This is your host, John Creamer, and today we have a special episode. We're going to talk about a very relevant topic that's going on not just in law enforcement, but across the first responder community, and that is recruiting and retention. And my guest today is Leon County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Shade McMillian. So, Shade, welcome to A Tactical Pause.
I appreciate it, John. Thank you for having me on today.
I'm delighted to have you on. We've crossed paths a lot in Tallahassee, and it's good to see you and have you on this side of the camera.
Likewise, good to see you. And again, thanks for having me on about this very important topic.
It is. It's very important, yeah. First, before we get into the meat of this, tell everybody about your name. Tell our listeners about the name Shade McMillian.
John, it's been with me for 48 years. It's kind of been a gift and a curse, but a lot of people ask me, Shade, is that your nickname? Is that your real name? And it is my real name. It is my government name, so to speak, and it's on my driver's license. And sometimes I will actually pull it out and show it. But it's actually a family name, John, from my mother's side. My mom made an agreement with my dad. If we had a boy, or if they had a boy, she wanted to use the name Shade, and my dad was so eloquently okay with that. I'm honored to have the name. I'm probably the third, not in succession, but third on my mom's side. But the gift and the curse aspect of it is, I always tell people it's been a great icebreaker for me in my personal life as well as my professional life. But it's the gift of it is, if I do something good, people say, well, it's that guy that's got that weird name, and they eventually come around to it. But on the flip side, if I do something bad, they go, yeah, he's got a really weird name. And then when they say, is it Shade? Yeah, that's the guy that did that. So in my career, especially as a uniformed patrolman, if I didn't make someone happy on a call for service, I couldn't run away from it. Everybody knew who it was.
Yeah, it's not like Joe Smith or anything.
No, I can't hide behind one of those run-of-the-mill average names.
Yeah. So listen, your name probably helps you out in your current assignment as well.
It does.
So tell our listeners, what do you do for LCSO?
Yeah, John, I'm currently the agency recruiting coordinator, and all-encompassing. I do the recruiting for our sworn side, our LEO side, as well as our detention facility, and I dabble into the civilian positions as well. If we have, a finance director, or if we have some school crossing guards, it's good for me to know that those positions within the agency that are available or open, because I'm out in the public and people see me, or they say, hey, are you guys hiring? So I just spoke to a bunch of our uniform patrol check-ons, shift check-ons, and I told them, I said, guys, it's valuable information to know what positions are open in our agency, because you guys are my de facto recruiters. I'm only one person, but that uniform speaks recruiter. people are interested in what you do, and they want to know what the job is about. So every time you get approached by someone in the public about what do you do for a living, that's a recruiting opportunity. So I tell my guys that that's the best way to be prepared for that, is to know what's going on in our agency as far as our workforce.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about recruiting in law enforcement in 2026. Tell
Yeah.
me, what are your biggest pain points, and what are the things that are easy, if there is any?
Well, John, I think nowadays the biggest issue is salary. I think you've got so many agencies competing salary wise. Just locally, the Tallahassee Police Department just got a fairly large raise in their annual starting salary with their officers. So when you have something like happen around, another agency in your area, sister agency or what have you, in your immediate area have a change in their salary, you have to take notice of that, and you have to be ready to not necessarily recruit against that, but you have to recruit alongside of that. We're all on the same team. We all love our brothers and sisters in blue as well as they love their brothers and sisters in green. Compared to sheriff's office and local municipal police agencies. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to recruit someone that's looking to start their career, it's kind of like, selling cars. You want the best deal possible. And there's some aspects of police departments that are different than sheriff's office. Sheriff's offices in the state of Florida run pretty much primarily on the Florida retirement system. So that's one good thing that you can sell to a potential candidate. But the biggest thing is, I think, other than the salary, John, it's the hesitancy in folks that really want to do this job. But unfortunately, the way that it's looked at in today's society, it's a very thankless job. And people worry about, what is it going to do to me, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. I'm 20 years into it. And John, you as well as anyone else can say just like what I do. There's days you wonder why you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, but the days that you love what you do far outweigh the days that you don't love what you do. So, and that's with any job, but with us, and I've watched your podcast, and you guys have talked about wellness and that resilience that we have in law enforcement today, and how important that is. We have to find those special people out there that have that little resilient gene in their being, that knows that, every day is not going to be rainbows and unicorns, I tell these folks. But at the end of the day, if you helped one person that day, then that's what you were there for. That's why we were put in this position and in this profession, is to help people at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. So when I got hired, it was back in 1992, and you competed. It was a competition to get your foot in the door anywhere, and there was also this mentality of taking a shotgun effect. You know what I mean? And applying it like 10 agencies, and hoping you would get your dream, and then you had to wait in line. The demographics changed, the pay was different, college degree requirements were all different. But today that's not the case anymore, right? I mean, today when I got into law enforcement, there was no recruiting. It was applicants waiting, and now that's kind of inverted, wouldn't you say?
Well, even if you go back 20 years, I started with the Leon County Sheriff. So I'll tell you, it's kind of the background of me, as opposed to the difference in the way it is now, just with me being in this position and seeing the difference. And when I started 20 years ago, I graduated the academy at the old Pat Thomas Law Enforcement Academy in Midway, Florida. I graduated there in June of 2005. And the sheriff's office historically was only hiring about 5 people a year back then. So I had to wait. I went into the reserves, which is basically you're doing it for free.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get your name up the back. The cool thing is that if you go into a reserve or an auxiliary unit like that, the background's done, you get your uniform, you're all ready to go. You're just waiting for that call from Human Resources that they've chosen you to go full time.
Yeah.
Which is what happened to me in February of 2007. I did reserve work for about a year and a half. And strangely enough, I was on my way to Hillsborough County for a recruiting weekend that was probably going to end up in a conditional offer through that agency, when on Friday afternoon, I'm in Homosassa Springs, Florida. I had to pull off on the side of the road, and we had the young lady still works in our human resources today. She called me, and I answered the phone, and I said hello, and she goes, "Is this Shade McMillian?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, it is." And she goes, can you come by the agency? I need you to fill out some paperwork. And I said, well, ma'am, and I told her I was going down for a conditional recruiting weekend with Hillsborough, and if everything went well, I was probably going to leave that recruiting weekend with a conditional offer. And she told me, she goes, do you still want a job? And it was very, she was very informal, but when she said it, I went, yes, ma'am, I do. She goes, well, you've been chosen to go full time with the Leon County Sheriff's Office. You have your booty here on Monday morning to get this paperwork signed. And so that weekend turned into a celebration weekend, because right after I got off the phone, I called the recruiter down in Hillsborough County just to, give him a heads up and be respectful towards him. And he gave me the blessing. He goes, Shade, he goes, you're going to a great agency. He goes, do me a favor. He goes, no harm, no foul here. He goes, have a great career. Just remember us in Hillsborough County if you ever want to move down this way. And he said, go have a great weekend and congratulations on starting your career. So that's how I started. And yeah, John, I wasn't recruited. I wanted to be a deputy for the Leon County Sheriff's Office. And I wasn't necessarily recruited, but I had a long conversation with then Sergeant Steve Harrelson, which ended up leaving the agency here as an assistant sheriff. He pulled me outside and was asking me, am I currently being sponsored when anyone? And I said, no, sir, I'm 100% free agent. And he was teaching us report writing. And I said, well, sir, I'm willing to go start my job in my career anywhere. I said, however, my passion is for the Leon County Sheriff's Office. So that's kind of what started, I guess you could say, my recruiting. Yeah. But yeah, the difference in now, John, is the fact of we're putting anywhere between 30 and 40 people through our FTEP a year on good years.
Tell our listeners what FTEP is, because it's not the same as
FTEP
FTO.
Yes, FTOs. It's basically the field training evaluation program is what FTEP is. But old hat law enforcement officers, old school guys, it's your FTO program.
Yeah.
Field training officer, but FTEP is more, I guess you say, new age is the evaluation program to look at it, because we are basically evaluating these guys and gals to make sure they can do the job. But through that process is something that you look at and you say, what are we looking at with these folks? Where are we getting these folks from? And I can tell you from just a recruiting standpoint, from what I've been doing it, for several months now, is people want to stay where they are because they're comfortable in those areas. I think we're dealing with a generation that is very comfortable where they are, and they want to police where they are, which is a great aspect when it comes down to that community policing component, because if you're happy where you are and the folks where you are, then your community policing efforts are going to be, that much better for yourself as well as your agency. So I think the biggest thing that's changed is folks just want to stay local. They don't want to move around. And if they do move around, is the agency going to help them with that relocation? And then you start, going into budgetary constraints and things of that nature, because we're not holding car washes, to raise money, so to speak. All this money comes from budgets and individual agency budgets. So sometimes you have to be creative in the ways that you attract these new folks in. But I think for the most part, it's this new generation wants to know the why.
Yeah.
Why do I want to work for the Leon County Sheriff's Office? Where when I was coming through, it was more of the hut. Like I give me the uniform and I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah.
And now it's like you have to have more of that buy-in, and they pay attention to the culture of your agencies more now, John, than you and I did. It was more of the structure is what we looked for probably when we were coming up. Now these folks want to know the why, and they're diving deep into the culture of what your agency provides and how well they take care of their officers.
That's what I was going to. There's something funny you said that the culture is super important, right? Mm-hmm. It's and you're right. When I didn't know the culture at all when I first started working. I just, hey, I got a job and you're paying me $12.83 an hour and I get to do this, I'm in. I didn't know anything about culture. I didn't know anything about esprit de corps. I didn't know my why, other than most of my family was in the first responder field, and I'm like, this is what I think I want to do. And I want to, but I never thought any of that stuff through. And now I see how important it is at my age. With anything that I do now, I'm like, hey, what's the why in it for me to go do that? Mm-hmm. So some of this is good. It shows the emotional intelligence of these people that are coming on, that they're looking, instead of like you and I were just, filling a plug in the wall. It's a completely different game. How do you explain the culture to a stranger? Somebody sees you now. Let me hit pause for a second. You're at a job fair, and I want you to tell us
Hmm.
about what those look like these days too. But you're at a job fair. Somebody comes up to you, and they're like, "Hey, what's it like to work there?" How do you go about explaining the culture of an agency in a couple of minutes at a restaurant or at a table?
Probably John, what I start off really more than anything is the philosophy and the reputation of our agency within Leon County and our region. Um, the one of the neatest aspects of the Leon County Sheriff's Office, and this, this is, I can only speak for, me recruiting for my agency. We have the privilege of being in a very, very spotlighted area within our state. We're in the capital. We
Yeah.
are the capital agency as well as TPD and Capitol Police. So the ability for me to talk about the culture that we have is, I have been here long before I was a sheriff's deputy. So I'm a part of the community, and our community is a part of our agency, and our agency is part of our community. We have a lot of community outreaches, and that builds our reputation. That builds that trust and legitimacy with our agency. That no matter what happens out there, when we're performing that preventive measure by having some type of saturated patrol somewhere, or we're doing that in intervention where we're going out and speaking to schools about human trafficking and sex trafficking and things like that. I think what I try to sell with the culture with us is that we truly care about everybody in our agency as part of the community. We don't look at our employees as a separate entity outside the agency. They're not just a number. They are part of the agency, therefore they're part of the community, and vice versa. And that's where that community policing component is so strong.
Yeah. Yeah. What other things do you see that are attractive to people that are kind of looking at law enforcement? Like you and I weren't. I didn't look at law enforcement. I was like, I jumped. I'm in. There was no
Yeah.
hesitancy. But like you said in the beginning of this episode, people are kind of looking and they're really weighing out the decision to get into it.
Mhm.
What things do you think they find that are attractive? We know the negatives. The negatives are there's a potential that your whole life's going to be on television.
Mhm.
That your worst moment as a first responder might be on television that night, and
Mhm.
you might lose some rights of privacy. But that's not really the norm. That's a misnomer. But what are some of the things that you would tell people that are good about it?
There's kind of a metaphor and an analogy, if you will, John, that I use when I'm talking to people about what this job does to you. I tell people it's just kind of like having kids. It's probably the hardest yet most rewarding thing you will ever do. Um, you know as well as I do, and folks that are listening to this that have law enforcement background, law enforcement experience, there are days where this is the hardest. It is the hardest job that you can do. It honestly is, because it is thankless. Unfortunately, we have, just like with any profession, we have folks out there doing bad things. And with our profession, if one person does something bad, it kind of spoils the whole bushel. And we're all painted with that broad stroke that one person, made that mistake with. But I think that's also the opportunity for us to humanize and be that type of bright light when people realize that there's good people out there doing this job. And I think when you're talking to someone about this job, is that the resilience of knowing that at the end of the day, you're helping more people than you're hurting. I can tell you with my, there's days, I was in school resource for 5 years. And just a couple of days ago, I had posted something on one of my social media accounts about a young lady had brought me a little pig, um, saying a little desk trinket, and she was very apprehensive about bringing me the pig because of the connotation with cops and pigs. But she was like, she goes, I don't know why I felt led to come up and talk to you. She goes, but I just want you to know I don't mean this, harm or anything. She goes, I just thought this was kind of funny. And I sit there and I said, hey, I take no offense to it, because I can have fun at my expense. I understand what's out there. But the cool thing is that it gave me an opportunity to interact with that young lady. And she told me I support law enforcement and what have you. So when I posted that on my social media, one of the kids that I had in my school in Leon County, I was a school resource deputy for 5 years. One of the kids that I had in my very first year of my school, he's probably, I don't know, he's probably 25 now and married, has a family. He sent me a message on my Instagram and he goes, hey, don't worry about it. You're still one of the goats. So when I see that, it's like that's why I do what I do. And just no matter what happened that day, just for him to send me that message, a kid that I had, in his most impressionable years, and he was coming up hard. He was coming up in a hard time in his life. But for him to reach out to me, someone that he knows loves what they meant to me in that school arena, and strangely enough, he's doing security for the company he works for now. So, something obviously good rubbed off on him, but it's just, that's the things, John, that I tell people. I try to give them the little anecdotes that I've had in my career, because there's, my family is a law enforcement family. My mom and dad worked in corrections their whole life. My mom worked at Appalachia Correctional Institute, and my dad worked at one of the juvenile detention centers in Jackson County. And it's always been in my blood, that structure, and I saw what my mom and dad went through. But I think the biggest thing is when you have somebody in front of you, and you know this, being out in public and seeing folks that talk to you about what you do, you just have to be honest with them and let them know it is one of the hardest things that I've ever done. However, the good outweighs the bad, and that there's something in you when you want to do, when you have that calling for public service. It doesn't matter what you do; it's always going to boil up to the top. The biggest thing, I'm a kid of 9/11. I saw the towers fall, World Trade Center towers fall on September 11th, 2001. And just out of that, there was something that boiled up inside. I was working for one of the banks in town, and I watched that. And I had, quite honestly, if I'd have stayed with the banks, John, I would have probably been a retired president of a bank right now if I'd have stayed on the ascension that I was going in the banks. But when I saw those towers fall, probably like a lot of Americans, you that little bulge of pride came up in your being, so to speak. And I just knew I had to act on it. And that was probably the day that my call for service was born, was out of seeing that. And 2 years later, I was in the police academy. And 20 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you about my career and going out and trying to build that legacy out with the folks that hopefully have that call for service in them as well.
Yeah, and see, all right, so there's a segment where you don't have to recruit. There's a segment of people that, like you said, they have a duty, they have a calling to serve, whether it's as a first responder, a nurse, medical practitioner, or whatever. They're going to do it. They might just need a little push, and somebody go, no, this is a safe space, no pun intended. This is a safe space. Come try it out. And once they come do a ride along, or they shadow somebody that's a first responder, they realize this is where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
But your challenge, and I would imagine all recruiters there's a lot of people that are just like we talked about, sitting on the fence. So you show them, here's the culture. You show them through your actions. You're a human being. You're a father. You're a son. Who wears a badge. But there's way more to you than just that star. And you've shown it to the students that you've led as an SRO, and even the deputies that are in roll call that go out every night or every morning. They're the recruiters. So to somebody that's sitting on the fence, you're selling the culture. I mean, pay's a big deal. But what are some of the other things that that somebody would be attracted to in law enforcement today?
I think the opportunity, for so many forks in the road. There's so many things you can do in law enforcement, John. When I started, the first thing that was in front of my head was uniform patrol. That's what I wanted to master. And then, like I said, I had the opportunity to go into the schools as a school resource deputy. That was an avenue. I chose to go that avenue, but the avenues that were in front of me at that point in time were criminal investigations or school resource deputy. I chose school resource deputy because I didn't feel like I had, I didn't feel like I had learned enough to go into investigations. And with our unit, you work some of them you work from beginning to end, some of the small crimes that happen in our school campuses. So that was an aspect that I was able to do. Now I worked through school resource, and then I had the opportunity to go into criminal investigations. And through my criminal investigations career, I went through property crimes, financial crimes, worked a little bit in special victims unit, and then eventually was working in our violent crimes or major crimes unit, which is your homicides and things of that nature. I think that's one aspect of law enforcement that I try to tell folks is that you can choose what you want to do. Whereas if you're working in a cubicle kind of environment, you're set to that cubicle. All you'll do is just move cubicles. At least with law enforcement, you can go from a Tahoe to a desk and then back to an unmarked vehicle. And it's every day is different and has the opportunity to be different. So you have the avenues. I think the avenues also continuing education. This is a job where you're constantly learning. I've had the opportunity to go back to school. I'm currently two classes from finishing my Homeland Security degree, which for about 3 years ago I was kind of trying to read the tea leaves and see where law enforcement's going. And I'm happy to say I feel like I chose the right pathway with Homeland Security, because I think if anyone's paying attention to what's going on in our country and what's going on globally with our country, you can see that Homeland Security is probably not necessarily the most important, but definitely the most talked about
Yeah.
aspect of law enforcement out there. And then I think the last thing I talk about is that security aspect of it. There's always going to be job security in law enforcement. We're always going to need, contrary to popular belief and what some people want to say, that law enforcement needs to, change or evolve. And it's always changing and evolving, but we're always going to need them, John. We're always going to need those folks standing in the void between the good and the evil to protect the folks that we serve every day in our communities.
Yeah, 100%. You're spot on there, Shade. And the other thing, too, about working at a law enforcement agency is you're right, is if you want to do year one in a uniform and then retire the same way, you can. There's nothing wrong with somebody that does their whole career on patrol. That just means they liked it, they found what they wanted to do, and they're comfortable there. But you can also, like you said, you could bounce from patrol to SWAT to motors to
Oh
training.
yeah.
And all the investigative units. And now the world, just talking about your degree, P.S. for our listeners, there's many times I've seen Shade McMillian working on his college degree off-duty
Yes.
on his own time at a
Yeah.
local coffee company here. And I'm proud of you for doing that. And that's the future, is we're not just, we continue to evolve as professionals, not just a profession, but individually. But the technology side of it. So
Mm.
there will be people today that start this job tomorrow or the next year that will never know what it's like to do some of the things you and I did, because parts of law enforcement will never be the same. But the
No.
technology side of law enforcement is just going to continue to expand and expand and expand. And then the other point I was going to bring up for our listeners too is that here's another difference between a PD, a police department, and a sheriff's office. Is you guys not only have law enforcement, the law enforcement bureau or division, you have the judicial services, and you have corrections. So
Yeah.
is it possible for somebody to work in all three bureaus or divisions in a career if they wanted to, shake things up?
Most definitely. You bring up a good point. We have a lot of folks in our detention facility that are dual certified. They've made the decision to have their detention or the correction certification, but they said, you know what? They had that ambition to do something more. They want to have a little bit more to do, or again, they've got that call to service outside of that facility. So they go and they go get cross trained, they get dual certified, and those folks will come over to the law enforcement side and basically see the whole the whole other side of that coin. And it gives me the opportunity to talk about our detention facility folks, and I know some of those, and being able to recruit for the last several months. Um, they are unsung heroes, John, in the life of a patrolman. If you go through one day of a patrolman, we might handle folks, and we might deal with some unruly character for 2 hours. And unfortunately, if we have to incarcerate them, we have to take that unruly individual to a detention facility. And now those folks inside that detention facility have to deal with that person we've dealt with for 2 hours. Now they've got to deal with them for ever how long. The communicative aspect of detention officers is such a great tool when it comes down to transitioning into the law enforcement world. Is that's the one thing that's hard to teach, is communication.
Yeah.
We were talking about this generation coming out. You and I both know, and when you've seen me in those Starbucks, you've probably seen me going back and forth between my computer and my phone. The phone, our smartphones they're damaging our communicative genes.
Yeah.
We're getting too used to firing back and forth texts and not being able to talk. We're becoming socially inept, I think, and that's because that we don't have to worry about emotions when we're texting someone. That's why it's a great opportunity for me to get in front of these academy classes, because I want to engage. I want to show the emotion that this job brings out to me. But with that component, that communication component within the detention facilities, I can't teach that. And you can tell when these folks decide to come over to the law enforcement side, when they get into our FTEP program, you can sometimes sit back and go, did they work in the detention facility? Because you can tell, because the way that they interact and the way that they engage with the public, and just dealing with somebody that's probably in a crisis or whatever the case, but you can see that they've had that training and they've had that experience inside the walls of the detention facility. And again, that's just things that we cannot teach in law enforcement.
Great, a couple of great points. So and you don't know this, but some of our listeners do. We really focused and highlighted the plight, the career, the unsung heroes that sit in a dispatch center, and we need to do the same thing with detention centers, correctional facilities, because and what Shade's talking about too is, so you have one deputy usually assigned to 20, 30 detainees.
Yeah. Oh, if not more.
So
at least that many. Yeah.
So he or she has to be a master of communication, just for survival, just for a regular work shift.
Exactly.
And this whole thing we talk about in law enforcement, it came out as branded as de-escalation. It's nothing new. It's learning how to communicate with somebody, because your mouth is your most powerful weapon. And the people that work at the jail have mastered that. That's what you're talking about, Shade, is their ability to communicate and de-escalate.
I couldn't have said it better myself, John. It's mastering the art. They used to call it verbal judo, but me, it's turning a crisis into a conversation. Yeah. I was lucky enough to be a part of the Leon County Sheriff's Office hostage negotiation team for several years, and on one of my 6-hour negotiations, it's the one thing that I got out of the negotiations, that the trust and the relationship that I built with someone on the phone, was that at one point in time he hung up on me, but then he called me back. Mm-hmm. And for a hostage negotiator to sit on the phone with someone that's going through a severe crisis, just on the phone, that's it, just me and that person mano a mano on over a telephone line, for me to have built that level of trust for someone to call me back in that type of situation, that's probably one of the greatest moments in my career. That showed me that I was doing the right thing. That showed me that I did choose the right career, because when I'm an adjunct instructor for the crisis intervention team and CIT International, and I teach de-escalation 4 or 5 times a year to classes of not only cops, but detention officers and dispatchers as well. And there's just something about that communicative gene that is you have to have it when you're doing this job. And it's one of the hardest things to teach. Either people have it, or, as the old saying goes, when you see talent in anything, in any kind of whether it be sports or whatever, there are just intangibles, John, that you can't teach. And when a person has that communicative gene, there's no limit to what they can do, really and truly, if you get down to it.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products, including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show.
Is there a different way to recruit for the detention center, for detention employees versus regular? It doesn't attract the same the people. There's overlapping qualities and skills and characteristics that people bring into first responders, but there's certain people that would gravitate towards working in a detention center versus being on patrol. Do you recruit differently for that, or how does that work?
I think it has a lot to do with the person and they're what they're looking out of their career, and honestly, what they're looking out of every day. Um, Folks that like, I mean, you have to want to love to drive. You and I both know. I mean, when you're in that vehicle, you put, I put an average of 300 miles on my car every day I was driving and being on patrol as a supervisor. I loved driving. I loved getting out in the community. And when you, if you want to do that stuff, then yeah, deputy sheriff and that street cop, if you will, is the way to go. When you're recruiting for detention, I think it's folks that maybe have seen the risk involved with it, whether that be up close and personal through family members or what they see on TV. I was just at a developmental council meeting last week, and I brought up the what I refer to as the Avenger metaphor. And we've all seen the Avenger movies over the last 10 or 15 years, and that's a team of superheroes, and they're going around and they're taking care of the bad guys. Well, law enforcement and detention are kind of like Avengers. We are the folks that are set out there in that uniform. We don't look like Iron Man and we don't look like Captain America, but we're still wearing a uniform. We're still part of a huge superhero team, so to speak. And when they're blowing up New York City, taking care of aliens or taking care of whoever they're taking care of to shield, that public away from that trauma or that threat, who does all the report writing? So it's like I tell people, when the Avengers get finished taking care of the bad folks or the threats in New York City, they can go sit in a diner and have a sandwich or whatever and refuel. Where every car that blew up in the street of New York in that movie, there's a report attached to every one of those cars.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference in law enforcement and detention, is that if you like riding, probably that law enforcement quotient is going to be good for you. If you don't like riding and you like that community, if you just want to be able to talk to people every day, then that detention environment's probably a little bit better for you, because there's not too much paperwork involved with it. You do, like you said, your job is mainly keeping rule in an unruly environment. And when you have one officer to at least, on the average, 30 incarcerated individuals, you're dealing with a whole that inside a detention facility is a world unto its own. It has its own little ecosystems.
Yeah.
It has its own little class systems. And that is something that, a normal person can't navigate. I will go as far as to say that it would be harder for a law enforcement officer to go into that environment than it would be for a correctional officer to come out into the law enforcement environment, because of the difference in environment.
I see that. Yeah, I see that.
I honestly think that it would be harder for me. That's why I have such a respect for those folks.
Yeah.
It would be harder for me to go into that pod with, let's say 90 individuals, whereas I'm only dealing with one out in the street. Does that make sense?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think so. So I think I think that, anytime that I talk to folks, I'm like, what do you think's harder? Do you think it's harder to go into the detention facility, or it's harder to come out and do our job? I personally think it's harder to go into that environment, just because you can't escape it. You don't leave it. You're there.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with what's happening in front of you. And a lot of that is crisis intervention.
Absolutely. Now, Shade, how do you recruit? Like in person and then virtually? What are the like top 5 ways to recruit in person and virtually?
Well, of course, you've got your academies, John. You can go out to your academies and you can visit. You can, call your directors and say, "Hey, tomorrow I'm heading east tomorrow." No, actually, I'm headed west tomorrow, and then Wednesday I'll head east to 2 different respective academies, trying to pull some of that talent to Leon County, if you will. So you do have your in person. You have your career fairs, and you have your college fairs and things of that nature, where you're able to connect with the community or someone seeking a job. Those young professionals, so to speak. I think right now the folks that we're trying to reach, whether it be that junior generation that we can help build that legacy in law enforcement, is social media, John. I mean, kind of what we're doing right here. For a fact that with this podcast, you're reaching people that probably would never even listen to law enforcement, because it's not around them, but they can easily plug in and listen to us. So being a former PIO, the social media aspect and the camera is I'm no stranger to that. So it was kind of like when I got in this position, I said, you know what? I said, we need to take this thing. We need to take this thing kind of on a social media tour. You get my face out there, get the agency out there. You have to educate, everybody what we have and who we are and, what we look for. I know that, looking forward, at least in my 3 to 6 month plan, I'm going to start doing some social media takeovers for the agency. I'm going to get on our Instagram handle, and I might even do it on my trip to my academies tomorrow, because I think the biggest thing in law enforcement today, and this, is we're not robotic. We're humans. And I think that the way that we can become more approachable, as you can see, I have a beard. That's another aspect of recruiting that's happened in the last 5 or 6 years, is that there were a lot of agencies, and you know this as well as I do, a lot of agencies were against beards. They were against tattoos and things of that nature. And when you're dealing with an ever-evolving society, that you're really weeding out, you're scrutinizing folks that have these things, and they're looking for agencies that are going to allow that. And I'm happy.
Culture.
Right. It's the culture.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're if you've got, let's say you've got a young 20-something that has tattoos on his arms. Now, granted, they're nothing offensive or anything of that nature. They just have tattoos on their arms, but they want to be a law enforcement officer, and they're showing you that they have the ambition, they have that drive that we look for. But there's an agency that will not allow tattoos, and then there's an agency that will allow tattoos. Naturally, where do you think that recruit is going to gravitate towards?
Yeah, they don't want to be
They're
stifled.
Exactly. They don't want to be scrutinized. They want to go to where the culture accepts what they have on their arms. So, as progressive as law enforcement is, the Young County Sheriff's Office about 5 or 6 years ago saw that we needed to move into it and start looking at some of these things that maybe we need to evolve. I think with anything, whether that be, banking or what have you, the medical industry, technology, you have to evolve. You have to look at the area around you. You have to look at the environment and say, okay, are we getting left behind, or are we charging ahead? And I think you have to be ahead of, as much as you can, be ahead of the curve and try to meet these things head on. And Sheriff McNeil was so gracious, 5 or 6 years ago, to start allowing us to have beards, and we raised a lot of money for the Cancer Society. That's how we did it. I actually went to Sheriff McNeil. I said, we need to raise some money for the Cancer Society, because it was during COVID, and the Cancer Society really couldn't sign on to do any kind of outside events, because they didn't want to pull people together that were immunocompromised to where they would possibly get sick. So we had the great idea to allow our guys and gals, for the first time ever, I say gals, we allowed our gals to have fingernails, but we allowed our guys to have, cropped beards. They had, they had to make them, we couldn't run around with ZZ Top beards and
Like
Duck
a
Dynasty
Civil War
beards.
general, yeah.
Right. Yeah. We couldn't have any of that running around. We had to, we had to make them look good. But we raised over $14,000 in 3 months for the American Cancer Society. And, I was PIO, and I was talking to some of the members of the media, and one of them asked me, said, hey, I see a lot of you guys are wearing beards now. Is that new? And I said, well, yeah, it's new. And I was very frank with them, and I asked them, I said, what do you think about it? And the first words out of one of the news anchor's mouth was, you guys look more approachable. You look like your community. So that's another thing, is that it's that evolution of recruiting and seeing, okay, do we have some of these antiquated views on law enforcement moving into, further into the 21st century, and allowing people to be individuals, and having that more inclusive culture in your agencies to allow these folks to be more like themselves. Because if you allow people to be themselves, John, you're only building a better employee. And if you're building a better employee, you're building a better community representative of your agency.
Preach it, man. That's right, Shade. And listen, just because we allow some things like tattoos, beards, or fingernail polish doesn't mean we lower the standards of professionalism.
No.
Just the opposite. Sometimes, like you said, when somebody comes into this profession and they're allowed to be themselves within reason, they thrive, and the workplace itself thrives. So,
yeah,
if you had to say something to a listener right now, or listener's son, and they were thinking maybe about a career in law enforcement, not just at LCSO, but a career in law enforcement, what would you say to them?
I would go back to say, first of all, if you feel it, it's probably something that's not going to go away. That, everybody says, well, I have a calling. I have a calling. I think it's just an inherent trait in people that want to serve. People that go into the armed forces, they come out with that pride in what they do, and I think that pride is also in law enforcement. And I think it's just something you can't teach, and you can't. As much as you try to bury that feeling, John, I was kind of the same way when 9/11 happened. There was something that happened stirred inside of me, and I think the best thing with that was that I was working in an environment, I was working in an industry where I was around deputies. I think if you truly are thinking about this career, seek out those law enforcement professionals and at every level, your uniform patrolmen, your detectives, talk to them about what the profession entails, because we are professionals. I tell folks all the time that I we aren't that we're not that entry level position. We are trained, and that training continues to happen as you get in this career. But we are professionals. We are a profession, and there's a lot to be expected with us. And I made the comment to someone this week to one is given a lot, much is expected.
Yeah.
And with us in this career, I think that it's probably the most rewarding thing. But I think if someone's thinking about it, keep don't let the hesitation get you. Don't worry about what that public perception is out there. Seek out those professionals inside that career. Don't always believe what you see on TV. I tell people all the time that the cop shows it's strictly entertainment. You never see them writing reports, and report writing is just about 70% of this profession.
Yeah, my God, yes, it is.
Yeah, everything we do is documented. So when you're watching TV, you can't always go by what you see on TV, because that's for entertainment purposes. But there's a reason that there's a lot of cop shows on TV, is because people gravitate towards that, and they want to be a part of that life. And what a great and awesome opportunity and privilege for that person to be able to be in that.
Yeah.
To be in that popular culture, to know, hey, you know what they do on TV, I get to do that every day for real. And I think that's just that's awesome to me, is to know that everybody watches. We know this. People watch the or the true crime podcasts. Those are the most popular podcasts in that medium. Well, why? Because people love those stories, and what better way to talk to someone about it is, I get to be inside of that world and get paid to do it.
Yeah.
And that's just it's just awesome to me.
It was one of the biggest honors of my life was to be a first responder, and now to be, on the sidelines, to be a part of the team still, and to help any way I can to first responders, regardless of the discipline they're in. It's a tremendous honor, and it's I hope somebody listening that is interested would reach out to you or somebody in their community and want to follow up on it, because it was a great job. It's still regarded. I was just reading a study by Police One. I think it was I was reading the last edition I got was last month, that law enforcement is still considered one of the most noble professions around, not just in America, but globally. And there is a great reward. There's very many challenges, but there's a great reward that outweighs the challenges. So,
I think with moving into the latter part of my career, John, and I'm sure you've probably felt this, and I'm sure you're feeling it doing this podcast. We go through so much in this career, and every now and then you're going to sit there and go, okay, well, what am I giving back? And to me, this recruiting effort and this recruiting position I'm in now is one of the ways I can give back. Another way is teaching. I love teaching. I love instructing. And anytime I get the opportunity to stand in front of contemporaries or either people that are coming up in this career, the opportunity for me to lend my legacy, so to speak, is that I can't cut my head open and pour all this information into one person. But if I can stand in front of a collective of colleagues and coworkers, or even people that are coming up in their careers, and give them just a little bit of what I've done in that training and experience that we always say in law enforcement, I think that's the legacy. And I think that's, at the end of the day, when I look back at my career, that's probably what I'm going to focus on is not only what I did for my community, but what did I give back to the profession to make it better than when I found it.
That's exactly right. Is you are building the future. Anybody that recruits for a first responder agency, especially a law enforcement, you don't like the way things are, start recruiting some really good people, and the culture will change. It changes all the time. Like you said, law enforcement constantly changes. The outside world may not see it, But those of us that are still in it, you look around, you're like, hey, when did that happen? It happened right in front of you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Shade, before I ask you how do we get a hold of you, I want to say this for our listeners. So here's an Easter egg. If you send us an email at podcast@fldeputyssheriffs.org, we will send you a brand new FDSA ball cap, patch, or a challenge coin. So the first 10 people that hear this message, send me an email at podcast@fldeputyssheriffs.org. You'll receive one of those gifts, and we'll go from there. So, or if you have a question about the podcast or you want a certain guest to come on or a certain topic, let me know. Shade, how does somebody get a hold of you? If they want to talk to you about recruiting or anything else in law enforcement, go ahead.
Sure. You can always access our website that's open 24/7 at leoncountyso.com. And if you want to specifically get in touch with me, there's a banner on our website that is Join Our Team. And if you will click on that banner, it will show my beautiful face, if you want to call it that. And it has all of my contact information. But if you want to reach out to me, my email address and all of my contact phone numbers are on that webpage at leoncountyso.com.
Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriffs Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputyssheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriffs Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputyssheriffs.org.